The night Sierra handed me divorce papers, she didn't flinch when I dropped my keys and just stood there, stunned, in the marble foyer we once picked out together. No trembling voice, no tears, just a crisp folder passed across the marble island like it was a business memo. She told me she had already spoken to her lawyer, said we could do this clean. "There's no need to drag it out, Logan," she said, cool as ice. What shattered me wasn't the fact that she wanted out. It was realizing she had left long before she told me. Emotionally, physically, even sexually, she had vacated our marriage and simply left her body behind, going through the motions while I was still trying to fix things. That was the last time I ever looked at her and believed we were in the same story. And the worst part, that night, after she walked into her room and closed the door like it was just any other night, I folded my suit jacket, lay on the living room couch, and told myself, maybe this is still salvageable. I was lying to myself. Everyone else already knew. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. The night Sierra handed me divorce papers, she didn't flinch when I dropped my keys and just stood there, stunned, in the marble foyer we once picked out together. No trembling voice, no tears, just a crisp folder passed across the marble island like it was a business memo. She told me she had already spoken to her lawyer, said we could do this clean. "There's no need to drag it out, Logan," she said, cool as ice. What shattered me wasn't the fact that she wanted out. It was realizing she had left long before she told me. Emotionally, physically, even sexually, she had vacated our marriage and simply left her body behind, going through the motions while I was still trying to fix things. That was the last time I ever looked at her and believed we were in the same story. And the worst part, that night, after she walked into her room and closed the door like it was just any other night, I folded my suit jacket, lay on the living room couch, and told myself, maybe this is still salvageable. I was lying to myself. Everyone else already knew. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. A week after signing the final papers, I was dragging a carry-on suitcase across cracked concrete in front of a faded motor inn in Queens. The glowing vacancy sign buzzed faintly overhead. I didn't even care. At that point, all I wanted was anonymity and walls that weren't laced with memories. The penthouse was Sierra's now. I let her have it. Let her take the skyline views and the cold kitchen marble and the life I helped her build, brick by brick. The motel lobby smelled faintly of old coffee and industrial-grade lemon cleaner. The clerk behind the desk was a woman in her early 30s, dark curls pulled back, glasses slid halfway down her nose. She didn't smile when I walked in, just looked up, noted the lines on my face, the weight in my walk, and the hollow behind my eyes. She didn't ask for ID right away. "Rough day?" she said, her voice low, like she already knew the answer. I gave a single nod. "Finalized my divorce today." She reached under the counter, pulled out a room key on a plastic tag, and slid it toward me like she'd done it 1,000 times. But before I turned to go, she added, almost like it wasn't meant for me but needed to be said, "Some endings don't mean failure. Sometimes they just mean you stopped lying to yourself." That stopped me. Not in a dramatic whiplash kind of way, just a breath in my chest I forgot to release. I didn't say anything back, just nodded and walked off to room 107, her words burning their way into my ribs. That first night at the motel, I lay on the stiff mattress in a room that smelled like dust, watching the slow rotation of the ceiling fan. I wasn't thinking about freedom. I wasn't thinking about starting over. I was thinking about how a decade of my life had ended without a scream, without a fight, without a final kiss. Just a folder on a countertop and a woman who used to love me telling me she didn't want to anymore. It wasn't the betrayal that wrecked me, not yet, at least. It was the indifference. I stayed at that motel longer than I'd planned. Told myself I was apartment hunting, which I technically was, but most days I didn't open the listings app. I needed space to be still, to feel nothing, to not be someone's husband, not be the attorney with the polished shoes and tailored suit and calm under fire reputation. I just wanted to sit in silence long enough to hear my own thoughts again. If I had any left, Zara, that was the receptionist's name, didn't pry. Every morning she gave me 2 small styrofoam cups of bitter coffee without a word. Every evening, she left the lobby radio on low, playing jazz or some old Nina Simone track that made the halls feel haunted but alive. On the 4th night, she joined me outside. I was sitting on one of those heavy green metal benches with chipping paint, the kind that eats into your thighs. She sat down without asking and didn't say anything for a long time, just lit a clove cigarette and stared up at the stars, like they were something new. Then finally she said, "You look like you're waiting for something that already happened." I didn't respond, not right away. "I thought we could fix it," I said eventually, voice low. I thought if I kept showing up, being steady, holding the line, she'd come back, but she was already gone. Zara nodded. "People don't always leave when they walk out the door. Sometimes they leave in pieces, and by the time you notice the door's open, they've already been gone a long time." We didn't talk much after that. Didn't need to. By the end of the week, I'd signed a lease on a modest apartment in Astoria. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, good light, hardwood floors, the kind of place that didn't echo. I brought only the essentials with me: 1 suitcase, a box of books, and a framed photo of Micah from his 6th birthday party at the zoo. Everything else went into storage, or into the trash. The first night in the new place, I stood by the window with a scotch in hand and called Micah. And I hadn't seen him in a few days. Sierra had primary custody during the transition. He sounded tired, quiet, different. "Hey, buddy," I said. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said softly. Then, after a pause, "Mom says I'll have 2 homes now." I swallowed the knot in my throat. "That's true, but I'll always be your dad, no matter which house you're in." Another long pause. "Are you sad?" "Yeah," I whispered. "But not about you. Never about you." After I hung up, I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I opened the window, letting in the hum of the city. It didn't fix anything, but it made the silence feel less lonely. 2 days later, I dropped by the motel one last time to return the room key. Zara was at the desk, a thick book open in front of her. Something philosophical, Camus or Baldwin, maybe. She looked up, nodded once, then reached for the key. "I found a place," I said. "I figured. Thanks for not asking questions." She smiled, just slightly. Questions are overrated. Listening does more damage. I set a small box on the counter before I turned to leave. Inside was a vintage fountain pen I'd kept in my drawer for years but hadn't used since law school. She'd mentioned once she liked handwriting things, said the rhythm helped her think. As I walked out of the lobby, her voice followed me. "Don't forget, some endings aren't failures." I turned back. Some aren't, but some people are. Her smile didn't break. "You're not one of them." And that was the first time I let myself believe it. 2 weeks into the new apartment, I still woke up at 6:30 a.m., out of habit. There were no alarms, no court filings to prep, no firm calls. But my body didn't care. It had been programmed for decades. I'd get out of bed, pour coffee into the same chipped mug, and stare at the empty chair across from me. The one Micah used to sit in with his mismatched socks and half-eaten cereal. The one Sierra never touched unless a guest was over. I hadn't seen Micah in 6 days. Sierra claimed he had a stomach bug and was better off resting. I believed her the first time, not the fourth. The call came from Dean Harrow while I was organizing a shelf of law books I hadn't cracked open in months. The kind of shelf that exists just to say something about who you used to be. "Logan," Dean said, voice low. "You got a minute?" It had been over a year since we'd spoken. We weren't friends, more like survivors of the same war. We both worked for Avery, Lowell Denton, before I left for boutique practice. He'd stayed behind, drank the firm Kool-Aid, and climbed the partner ladder while I chose, well, something smaller but cleaner. "What's going on?" I asked. Dean hesitated. "You ever wonder if Sierra had someone lined up before the divorce?" My spine stiffened. "What do you know?" "I didn't call to gossip," he said quickly. "Just something's been bothering me." "I figured you deserved to know." He paused, then added, "Nico Dresden. Ring any bells?" My pulse stilled. "Yeah, he runs Zurich Partners. Sierra mentioned him once. He's the one who pulled her into that West Coast hedge fund invite-only boardroom." "They're not just business associates," Dean said. "They weren't just collaborating. They were seen together, before your separation was public." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My hand tightened around the edge of the desk, hard enough that a nerve in my wrist flared. "She used your marriage as a holding pattern," he continued. "Held on until something better came along. Logan, I wouldn't say this if I wasn't sure." The click of the line going dead felt like a gunshot in an empty hall. I sat there in that moment of silence, trying to stitch my breath back together. Nico Dresden. Slick, grinning, always everywhere Nico. He had been orbiting us for months, industry parties, gallery launches, panels Sierra insisted we attend. I'd shaken his hand more than once, even accepted a drink from him at an Upper East Side fundraiser. That drink might as well have been poison. When I finally stood, my legs moved without me. I crossed the apartment, opened the closet, and pulled out the shoebox I hadn't touched since moving in. Inside were things I wasn't sure why I'd kept. Photo booth strips, a wedding program, the drawing Micah had made of our family last fall, the one where we were all holding hands under a purple sun. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Then I ripped it in half. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call Sierra. What I did instead was methodical, cold, legal. I went to my file cabinet, pulled out the sealed custody documents, and started reviewing every clause Sierra's lawyers had included. I found a clause, buried deep, granting review rights in the event of household instability. I knew how to press it, how to use it to file a temporary adjustment motion. I picked up my phone and called my assistant. "Angela, can you pull the original filing packet for Pierce fee?" "Pierce? I need everything. Financials, witness statements, timestamps." She didn't question it. She just said, "On it." By the next morning, I was in motion. I'd never intended to fight her, never planned to be the bitter ex with vendettas and revenge plans. But this wasn't bitterness. This was protection. If Nico Dresden was around my son, I needed to know. If Sierra had violated court terms, that changed everything. The motel felt like the only place quiet enough to think. Zara was behind the counter again when I walked in. She looked up from a small paperback, scanned my face once, and said, "Room 107's open if you need to sit." I nodded. "Thanks." 10 minutes later, she was outside, standing beside me with 2 black coffees. She handed me one. No questions. "I need to ask you something," I said finally. "Ever heard of a man named Nico Dresden?" Her eyes didn't blink. "Tech guy, startup king. Seen him on Bloomberg once. Arrogant smile. Why?" "He's seeing my ex-wife. Might have been sleeping with her before she handed me the papers." Zara leaned back. "So that's the flavor of betrayal you've been steeping in." I let out a breath. "I keep telling myself it doesn't matter, that I'm past it. But it's like, the second I start to find footing, I get hit with another truth I didn't ask for." She sipped her coffee, then said, "Sometimes the truth doesn't knock. Sometimes it just lets itself in and sits in your chair." I didn't respond, not because I disagreed, but because it hit too close to the bone. Later that night, I drafted the motion for shared custody reconsideration. I used precise language, made no accusations, just a few inquiries, a few requests for proof of stability. It was the cleanest document I'd ever written, and it reeked of precision. When I dropped it off at my attorney's office the next day, he raised an eyebrow. "I thought you said you didn't want to fight." "I didn't," I said, "but she already started one. I'm just showing up now." The first email from Sierra came 48 hours later. Subject, "Really, Logan? If this is about Micah, you could have called me directly. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this path, legal filings, court noise, it's not good for him. We said we'd keep him out of this. Are you going back on that?" I read it twice, then deleted it. 2 days later, a photo arrived via text, unsolicited, from an old friend of Sierra's. It showed Sierra at a rooftop event, wine in hand, laughing against Nico's chest. Micah stood beside them, holding Sierra's wrist like it was a leash. The timestamp read 7:42 p.m. on a school night. I sent it to my lawyer within 5 minutes. We had leverage now. By the end of the week, the judge scheduled a hearing. Temporary review. Nothing final. Just a look under the hood. When I told Micah he'd be coming to stay with me for a few days, his voice lifted an octave. "Really? Just us?" "Just us," I said. He didn't say much after that, but I heard it. The relief. The hope. The unspoken things children feel but don't have words for. When I picked him up outside Sierra's building, Nico was there, leaning against a Mercedes with sunglasses on at dusk. He didn't speak, just looked at me like I was the problem. I didn't give him the satisfaction of eye contact. Micah climbed into the car, buckled himself in, and whispered, "Can we get ice cream? We can get 2. Back at my apartment, I watched him move from room to room, rediscovering everything. The books, the old toy box, his dinosaur pajamas I'd folded neatly in a drawer 2 weeks earlier, not knowing when he'd wear them again. That night, after he fell asleep on the couch watching nature documentaries, I sat beside him and just listened to him breathe. The house didn't echo anymore. In the quiet, I heard a question form in my own mind, one I hadn't dared ask before. How long had I been asleep in my own life? The courtroom wasn't a place I expected to return to under these circumstances, not as an attorney, as a father, as a man defending what should have never been threatened. The hearing was set for 9:00 a.m., sharp in Family Court, Midtown Manhattan. The building was gray, windowless, almost purposely lifeless. I wore a dark charcoal suit, the same one I wore when Sierra and I signed the final divorce decree. I didn't wear it for nostalgia. I wore it because I needed to feel like steel. Micah was with his sitter, Marlene, a retired school teacher who used to teach second grade at his elementary school. Someone stable, grounded. The kind of woman who made waffles from scratch and read bedtime stories in a whisper-soft voice. Someone I trusted more than Sierra at that moment. My attorney, Brendan Coe, met me on the courthouse steps. Calm, young, but cutthroat. That's why I hired him. He had no sentimental ties to my past, only a commitment to precision. "You ready?" he asked, scanning my face. "As I'll ever be." Inside the courtroom, Sierra sat at the opposite table, perfectly styled as always. Cream blouse, slick bun, a diamond stud in each ear. Her attorney, Mina Levitt, looked like she was carved out of old money, sleek, cold, efficient. They barely looked at me. But Nico? He was there, sitting 2 rows behind Sierra, arms crossed, sunglasses tucked into the collar of his shirt like he owned the building. It wasn't just arrogance. It was intent. He wanted me to see him. He wanted me to feel displaced. Instead, I looked right through him. The judge was a woman in her late 50s. Sharp eyes. No time for theatrics. She read the motion quietly, then glanced between both tables. "Mr. Pierce, you're requesting temporary modification of the custody agreement. On what grounds?" Brendan rose. "Your Honor, this request is due to substantial shifts in the child's home environment. Unvetted exposure to unrelated adults during custodial time, overnight visits in the presence of a romantic partner with a public reputation that may pose instability, and late-night outings on school nights. We're not asking for full custody, just increased parity, more weekends, more presence, a return to shared structure." Sierra didn't even flinch. She just sat there, legs crossed, as if the accusations were someone else's. Mina stood. "Your Honor, this is retaliatory. My client's dating life, while unfortunate from a timing perspective, is not criminal, nor damaging. There is no evidence Micah has been placed in harm's way." I leaned forward, careful to keep my expression neutral. Brendan handed over the photo, time-stamped. Clear. Micah, Sierra, and Nico on a rooftop bar at 7:42 p.m. A Tuesday. Micah was present during an adult gathering, past curfew, in the company of individuals not related to him. This was not a family setting. It was a socialite event with alcohol present, Brendan stated. The judge held the photo, studied it, then looked up. "Ms. Pierce, is this accurate?" Sierra cleared her throat. "Yes, Your Honor, but it was an isolated occasion. Nico and I were— Are you cohabiting with Mr. Dresden?" There was a flicker of hesitation, the kind that tells the truth louder than any denial. "We've spent time together, but we do not live together." "Has he spent the night in your home during Micah's custodial periods?" Silence. Then, "Yes, once or twice." Brendan spoke calmly. "Your Honor, we simply ask that Micah's home life be consistent, predictable, and free from adult entanglements that he cannot process. Children need clarity, not gray zones." The judge nodded slowly, then spoke with finality. "I'm granting the request for shared weekends and an alternating weekday dinner schedule, effective immediately. This court expects both parties to adhere strictly to the current co-parenting agreement. Any deviation will result in further legal intervention." Sierra's eyes snapped to mine across the room. But I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply stood and thanked the judge. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about stability. For Micah. Afterward, I exited the courtroom and stepped into the hall, lungs filling for the first time in days. Brendan followed. "You handled that well," he said. "She didn't see it coming. She didn't need to. This wasn't revenge." He gave a short nod, then peeled off to make another hearing. I turned to leave and found Nico standing in front of me, arms folded. "You enjoying the moral high ground?" he asked, voice low. I stared at him for a long moment. Then said, "You know what the difference between you and me is? I build things, you borrow them. You think this custody stunt makes you a better man?" "No," I said. "The fact that I didn't blow up her reputation when I could have, that makes me the better man." He chuckled. "You'll never win her back, Logan." "I'm not trying to. I'm just making sure she doesn't wreck our son on her way out." I brushed past him before he could respond. That evening, Micah came over for dinner. We made spaghetti and meatballs from scratch. He helped stir the sauce, getting marinara on his sleeves. I didn't care. He looked happier than he had in months. "Can we watch that animal movie again?" he asked with a full mouth. "You mean the one with the talking dogs that become spies?" He laughed. "Yeah, that one." We curled up on the couch, and for once, it felt normal. Not forced, not like a borrowed memory, just real. At bedtime, he asked, "Do I have to go back tomorrow? You'll come again Wednesday, and next weekend." He nodded, then whispered, "I like it here better." I didn't respond, just kissed his forehead and tucked him in tighter. The next morning, Sierra showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there in a white trench coat, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice taut. I stepped aside, let her in. She didn't sit. "This wasn't supposed to get ugly, Logan." "It didn't. You let someone reckless orbit our son. I put up a boundary. Nico's not reckless. You barely know him." She looked down. "You think I'm a bad mother?" "No," I said honestly. "I think you made a selfish choice, and I think you didn't think past your own pain." Her eyes flashed. "You think this is easy for me? You think I wanted to raise a child between two households?" "No. I think you wanted to reinvent your life and didn't care what pieces cracked in the process." She exhaled, long and angry. "Nico was never supposed to be a factor, but things were already ending between us. You know that? We were drifting for years. Then why didn't you say something? Why wait until you had someone lined up?" "Because I was scared, Logan," she shouted. "Scared to walk away and find nothing waiting. Scared of being alone. Scared of disappointing Micah. Scared of not being enough." I watched her closely. For once, she wasn't polished. She wasn't composed. She was unraveling. "You always had this way," she continued, quieter now, "of making me feel like the chaos was mine to hold alone. Like if I didn't perform stability, I was weak. That was never my intention. But it's how it felt." We stood there for a long beat in silence. Then I said, "I'm not angry anymore. Just done." She blinked, surprised. "Done with what?" "With carrying guilt that doesn't belong to me." Sierra nodded slowly, then turned to leave. Just before she stepped out, she looked back and said, "You're a good father." Then she was gone. That night, I stood on the fire escape, staring out at the dark skyline. I thought about Sierra's words, Nico's smirk, Micah's laughter, the court's decision, all of it, compressed into a single truth. I was still standing, not broken, not bitter, just awake. Zara texted around 10 p.m. "Zara, you good?" I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, "Better than yesterday." Zara, that's a start. She didn't ask for details, didn't need to. She just knew. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself. It started with silence. Not the kind that follows an argument, or the kind that signals peace. This was calculated silence, the kind that's thick with tension. The kind people wear like armor when they know they've lost control of the story. Sierra stopped replying to my texts unless they involved exact pickup times or doctor's appointments. No small talk, no "Micah had a good day" updates. Just clipped sentences, as though speaking to me was a legal obligation rather than a shared parental responsibility. I didn't press. I'd already said everything that needed to be said. Micah, meanwhile, was blooming. He'd started humming again when he colored, laughed when he spilled milk, climbed into my lap without asking, resting his head against my chest like he used to when he was 4 and needed reassurance the world wasn't going anywhere. That week, he came home with a drawing. It was crude and childlike, just a stick figure triangle with 3 people in it, labeled me, Dad, and Zara. I stared at it for a long time. When I asked him about it, he shrugged and said, "She makes you smile." I didn't know what to say to that. Zara didn't push. She never had. She still worked the motel desk on the weekends and wrote poetry on weeknights, often sitting on my balcony with a paper journal, scribbling in blue ink. Sometimes she read them aloud to me. Sometimes she didn't. "Does it bother you?" I asked one night while we sat on the fire escape nursing coffee. "What?" "That we talk so much but still say so little." She smiled. "You say more in silence than most people do in full sentences." "Is that a compliment?" "It's a warning," she said, laughing. I looked at her, really looked, at the woman who showed up in my life with no demands, no masks, who handed me truth without sugar, and still made it feel like grace. "How do you stay so calm?" I asked. I stopped expecting people to behave the way I wanted them to. "And what do you expect now?" She leaned her head against the metal railing. "Nothing. That's the secret. You stop expecting, and you start choosing." Then came the call. A woman named Marla, head of admissions at Elbridge Academy, a private preparatory school Sierra had been courting since last spring, left me a voicemail. "Mr. Pierce, we'd like to confirm your attendance at the parent evaluation next Thursday. Sierra said you'd be joining." My eyebrows lifted. Micah was already enrolled at a great school. Elbridge was 5 figures a semester and came with its own dress code, social hierarchy, and rumor mill. I called Marla back. "Actually," I said carefully, "this is the first I've heard of this meeting." There was a pause. "I'm so sorry. I was under the impression this was jointly decided. Sierra said you'd signed the documentation." My mouth went dry. "I'd like to see the paperwork," I said. Within the hour, she forwarded it to my inbox. There it was. My name, my signature, forged. Perfectly. I stared at the document for a full minute, bile rising in my throat. I dialed Sierra. No answer. Again. Nothing. On the 3rd attempt, she picked up. "What?" she said, cool, impatient. "You forged my name." Silence. "You signed my name on school documents without telling me." "Sierra, what the hell are you doing?" She exhaled through her nose. "It was easier this way. You'd never have agreed." "You're right. Because he's 6, and this school has a tuition higher than most undergrad colleges. You don't get to make unilateral decisions." "I was doing what's best for him." "No, you were doing what's best for your image." Her voice turned sharp. "You always think you're the only one who knows what's right. Always the hero, the savior, the stable one." I felt my temper spike. "You forged a legal document. You put me in legal jeopardy. Do you realize how serious this is? You want to press charges? Go ahead. Let's see how that looks." I didn't answer, because I knew what she was doing, pushing me to retaliate, to look like the aggressor, to make a move that she could weaponize later. And instead, I documented everything, every email, every voicemail, every message thread. I sent it all to Brendan, who didn't respond with alarm, just clarity. "We'll file a contempt motion," he said, not as revenge, as a line in the sand. The night before the hearing, Micah had a fever. I held his forehead against my palm, watched him curl into himself like a question mark, and wondered how many more courtrooms he'd be mentioned in before this was over. He blinked up at me. "Are you mad at Mommy?" I didn't answer right away, then said, "I don't like some of the choices she's made, but I don't hate her." "Do you still love her?" His voice was barely above a whisper. I looked down at my son, the product of a once-believed fairy tale, the only thing we'd ever made together that wasn't a lie. "I love the part of her that made you," I said, and that was the truth. In court the next day, Sierra denied everything. "It must have been an error," she said smoothly. "The school misunderstood. I certainly didn't forge anything." Brendan handed over the documentation. Then he brought in Marla to testify. Her words were exact. Sierra told me Logan was fully on board. When I asked for his signature, she returned it within the hour. Sierra's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The judge, same as last time, didn't flinch. Just said, "I find this deeply concerning." I waited for the verdict. I wasn't expecting full custody, just accountability. Then the gavel dropped. "Primary custody will shift temporarily to Mr. Pierce pending further review. Ms. Pierce's custodial privileges are reduced to supervised visitation every other weekend for a period of 60 days. Sierra's mouth fell open. My heart thundered in my chest. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply nodded, because this was justice, not vengeance. Outside the courthouse, Zara was waiting. She didn't ask what happened. Just handed me a bottle of water and said, "You look like you just ran through a hurricane." "Feels about right." She placed a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "I'm not used to winning." She looked at me then, deep and steady. "You're not winning, Logan. You're reclaiming." Micah adjusted better than I expected. He asked questions. Of course he did. Why wasn't Mommy picking him up? Why did he have to see her with someone else in the room? I answered honestly, but gently. "Mommy made a mistake. The court wants to make sure everything's okay before she sees you alone again." He nodded slowly. "She said it was your fault." I swallowed hard. "What do you think?" I asked. He didn't answer, just looked down at his shoes. That night, I read him 2 stories instead of 1. Let him fall asleep in my bed. Stayed up late just watching him breathe. 3 weeks later, Nico showed up at my building. He was alone. No sunglasses. No swagger. "Mind if I come up?" he asked. "I mind," I said flatly, "but I'll hear you out here." He shifted. "Look, I didn't come to fight." "Then what?" "I ended it with her." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "She's not who I thought she was." I crossed my arms. "She's exactly who I warned you she was." Nico sighed. "I didn't want to believe it, but the way she talks about you, it's obsessive, like she's still fighting a war you already walked away from." "I have walked away." He nodded. "I believe that, which is why I'm telling you, she's unraveling. She said things about Micah, about what she'd do if she couldn't get him back." My blood chilled. "What did she say?" "She talked about leaving the city, disappearing with him, said the courts were rigged, that she had options." I stared at him, rage and dread colliding in my chest. "You're just now telling me this?" I wasn't sure if it was just heat of the moment talk, but she's not stable. I pulled out my phone, called Brendan. We filed a restraining order request within the hour. Micah was never left unsupervised again with Sierra. She didn't show up for 2 of her scheduled visitations. Claimed illness, then a work emergency, then silence. By the time the 60 days were up, the court made the ruling permanent. I became the sole custodial parent. Sierra's rights weren't revoked, just paused, reevaluated every 6 months. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. On Micah's birthday, Zara brought over a cake, not from a bakery, homemade, with frosting that spelled out 6 years of awesome. He lit up like a firework. We had a small party, just the three of us, plus Marlene and her golden retriever. There were no decorations, no photographers, no Instagram posts, just joy, the kind you don't broadcast, the kind you protect. That night, after Micah was asleep and the dishes were done, Zara and I sat on the couch. She looked at me for a long time, then said, "You're not broken, you know." I was. Sure, but you're not anymore. I reached for her hand. She didn't flinch. When Brendan called with the judge's final ruling, I didn't feel joy. I felt weight, a kind of exhausted gravity that doesn't let you jump up and down. You just stand there, breathing slowly, realizing it's finally over. Sole custody, full legal rights, no more supervised visits, no more vague pickup instructions, no more waiting to see if my son would come back confused or colder. Micah was officially mine. But victories like these, they're not clean. They come with blood in the soil and scars you don't show anyone. The morning after the ruling, Micah sat at the breakfast table building a Lego tower with quiet concentration. He didn't know what court rulings meant, but he knew peace when he felt it, and peace had been returning to our home in layers. I slid him a plate with waffles shaped like dinosaurs. T-Rex or Triceratops? He grinned. T-Rex, duh. He poured syrup with 2 hands, sticky and determined. Can Zara come today? I paused. She has work, buddy. He looked up. You like her, right? I nodded, surprised at how easily the truth came out. Yeah, I said. I do. He returned to his syrup river, satisfied. I stepped away, my phone already buzzing. Brendan. Logan, you might want to see this. He sent the link. An expose article. Exclusive. NYC real estate mogul's mistress faces custody loss. Allegations of forgery. Sierra's name was right there in bold. The piece didn't mince words. It painted her as unstable, entitled, reckless. It mentioned Nico, the forged signature, the failed court appeal, the temporary restraining order. It didn't say my name, but it didn't have to. Anyone in our circle would connect the dots. I closed the article, then checked my voicemail. Zara's voice, soft but urgent. Hey, there's something you should know. I didn't want to say anything before because it felt messy, but I got a message this morning. From Sierra. My heart clenched. She came to the motel, left a note, I think she's spiraling, Logan. I called Zara immediately. She picked up on the first ring. She said I stole you, Zara whispered. Said I ruined her family. She what? She said I slithered in like a snake. Her words, Logan, I didn't even respond, She looked hollow, like something in her snapped. I felt my breath leave me. Are you okay? I'm fine, she said, but I don't think she is. I didn't confront Sierra. I didn't need to. That afternoon, her attorney filed a petition requesting counseling before she could reapply for visitation. It was official. Even her side had accepted the unraveling, and the press wasn't done. The second article dropped 2 days later. Behind the penthouse walls, how power, infidelity, and custody crushed the Pierces. This time, it did name me. The piece tried to balance tone, but it was clear public sympathy wasn't on her side. She'd overplayed her image, used Nico as a prop, and now the audience had turned. In our world, where appearances held currency, this was collapse, not a death, but a burial. 3 days later, I found Nico waiting outside Micah's school. He wasn't there to pick him up, he had no right to, but he stood leaning on a luxury black Maserati, sunglasses back on, expression unreadable. I approached slowly. You're trespassing. I know, he said. Then what are you doing here? He looked down, exhaled, then met my eyes. She called me drunk, screaming. I didn't blink. I'm not here for her, he added. I'm here to tell you she's not done. She's out of moves. Maybe legally, he said, but not emotionally. I crossed my arms. What's that supposed to mean? She said she's going to make you pay for humiliating her, that she'll get her reputation back, even if it means burning what's left. I didn't flinch. Let her try. He looked tired. For the first time, I saw the cracks beneath the polished smugness. She used me, he admitted. You were right. I thought I was the story. Turns out I was just a chapter she wanted to rewrite. I didn't offer him comfort. I just said, stay away from Micah and from Zara. He nodded once. I already do. That weekend, Zara stayed over. We didn't plan it. She came by after her shift, curled up on the couch beside me, and we fell asleep to the hum of late-night television and the quiet rhythm of shared breathing. In the morning, Micah padded into the living room, paused, then smiled. Pancakes? Zara looked at me. I smiled. Pancakes, I said. We made them together, laughter rising like steam. Zara cracked the eggs. Micah stirred the batter. I flipped each one with exaggerated flair, earning applause every time I didn't drop one on the floor. Later, Micah asked if Zara was going to live with us. I didn't answer right away. Zara looked to me, and for the first time, I said it out loud. Maybe someday. Micah nodded, then hugged her. Just like that. No tension, no resistance, just warmth. That night, Sierra called. I debated answering, but something in me knew I had to. Logan, she said, her voice raw. I heard. I didn't leak those articles. I believe you. Silence. You don't sound angry, she said. I'm not. Why not? Because there's nothing left to fight over. She didn't respond. I loved you once, I said gently. I don't anymore, but I don't hate you either. Her breath caught. You know what hurts the most? What? That you're finally the man I always wanted, and now I'm the woman you'll never want again. I didn't say anything. Some wounds don't need words. She hung up without saying goodbye. Zara moved in quietly. No announcement, no ceremony, just boxes placed one at a time, books arranged on shelves, a ceramic mug with her initials beside mine in the cabinet. Micah took to it like sunlight. He called her Z and held her hand when they crossed the street. He asked her to help with homework and begged her to read bedtime stories with voices. We weren't a fairy tale. We were something realer. Sierra stopped calling, stopped appearing. Her attorney sent quarterly reports. Nothing more. By spring, the tabloids had moved on to fresher scandals. Nico had vanished back into his global properties. Sierra's influence faded quietly. A candle snuffed before the wick ran out. She wasn't destroyed, just removed. On the anniversary of the divorce, I sat on the balcony while Micah napped and Zara wrote poetry in her journal. I thought about who I was a year ago, a man carrying silence like bricks in his chest. A man who let guilt steer his decisions. A man who almost let his story end without a final chapter. Now, I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. Not because I won every battle, but because I refused to fight the wrong ones. The morning I received the final letter from Sierra's attorney, I didn't expect it to hit as hard as it did. No threats, no petitions, no appeals. Just a printed notice that Sierra had signed over all parental decision-making rights, officially stepping down as Micah's joint guardian until further notice. No fight, no signature forged, just a quiet surrender printed in Times New Roman like it wasn't the end of a war. I reread the letter twice. Zara found me standing by the window, the envelope trembling in my hand. She gave up, I whispered. She chose to walk away, Zara corrected gently. There's a difference. But she didn't even say goodbye. She said it a long time ago, Logan. You were just too decent to believe it then. Micah was still asleep. Sunlight poured through his door. In that moment, I realized he would never have to unlearn the kind of love that withheld and manipulated. He would grow up with one truth, that love showed up, even when it was hard, even when it meant starting over, especially then. Later that week, I got a call from Marlene. She sounded uneasy. You've heard from her? She asked. Sierra? Yeah. She called the firm, said she wanted to meet. Alone. Did you? No, she said. Because the tone in her voice, it was strange, apologetic but also rehearsed, like she'd already decided what she was going to say, no matter how I answered. I paused. Do you think she's planning something? I think, Marlene said slowly, she's trying to rewrite her own ending, but not in court. In people's minds. That Friday, Zara and I were walking through the farmer's market when a woman approached us, early 40s, hair tied in a silk scarf, holding a notebook like it was armor. Logan Pierce? She asked. I hesitated. Yes? I'm Claire. I work for the Raven Weekly. I'm writing a piece on post-divorce recovery and resilience, particularly from men's perspectives. You've come up a few times. I didn't respond. She flipped open the notebook. There are a lot of stories going around about your custody case. I'm not here to paint anyone as a villain. I just want the truth. Zara gently stepped between us. He's not interested. Claire nodded. I understand. Just, if you ever want to control the narrative, my number's on the back. She handed me a card and walked away. That night, I stared at the card on the kitchen counter. Zara sipped tea on the couch. You thinking of calling her? I don't know, I said honestly. Would it change anything? Only if you need it to. I looked at her. What would you do? I already told my story, she said. Through poetry, through silence, through showing up when it counted. She leaned over, set her mug down. You don't owe the world a performance, Logan. You already won by living. A week later, Nico reached out again, this time through a letter. Handwritten, delivered by courier. It was 2 pages long, and it started with a sentence I never expected from him. You were right about her. About me. He described the downfall, not in dramatic terms, but with surprising humility. She burned every bridge before she realized she needed someone to cross back with. I wasn't that someone. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask to meet. He just wrote, You were the better man. You were the better father. I should have stayed out of it. I hope you find peace in the life she tried to shatter. I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, not because I wanted to keep it, but because some truths deserve to be acknowledged before being put away. In May, Micah graduated from his first year at school with a handmade paper crown and a crayon-stained certificate of most kind-hearted. I cried in the parking lot and didn't care who saw. He wore a button-up shirt Zara picked out and asked me afterward if we could get ice cream to celebrate. 2 scoops? I asked. 3? He grinned. It's a special day. We walked down 8th Avenue, our fingers sticky, laughter echoing off the storefronts. I felt like a man who'd survived a hurricane and finally stepped into the sun without flinching. Not healed completely, but free. That summer, Zara started submitting her poetry. She got her first acceptance letter in July, from a Brooklyn lit journal called Current Crescent. They published her piece titled Reception Desk Confessions. I knew the story behind every line. It wasn't just about a broken man checking into a motel room. It was about a woman who recognized her own past in someone else's silence, who chose to stay, and who finally learned to trust staying again. Then, one Sunday afternoon, while Zara and I were organizing the closet, Micah came in with a question that froze us both. "Did Mommy ever love me?" I turned, knelt down. "Why do you ask?" "Because she never says it. Not like you do." Zara held her breath beside me. I took Micah's small hand in mine. "Love can be confusing," I said carefully. "Sometimes people don't know how to show it the right way, or they're so full of their own hurt, they forget how to hold anyone else's." "But did she?" I paused. "Yes," I said. "She did. But sometimes love isn't enough if someone doesn't know how to take care of it." Micah nodded slowly. "Okay." Then he hugged me, fiercely, as if sealing in my answer. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from Sierra. No return address. No request for reply. Inside, a single sentence written in her looping script. "I see now what I lost, and why I was never ready to keep it." There was no apology, no plea, just a final line of clarity. I stared at it for a long time. Then I fed it through the shredder, not out of anger, but acceptance. The past doesn't have to be carried if it's already been faced. By the end of summer, Zara's lease was up. She moved in fully. Dresser drawers, art prints, spices labeled in Sharpie. We didn't have a merge the lives conversation. It happened naturally, like light filtering through curtains you didn't know were drawn. One night, as we tucked Micah in, he asked, "Will I always live with both of you?" I nodded. "If that's what you want." He smiled sleepily. "I like it when you laugh together." Zara kissed his forehead. I turned off the lamp. And I realized this was the home I thought I was building years ago. But better, because this one was built with truth. A year later, I no longer measured time in pain. I didn't wake up wondering if Sierra would call. I didn't keep track of custody exchanges or legal deadlines. There were no more sudden jolts of panic at the sound of my phone buzzing. Peace wasn't loud. It was quiet. Soft like a Saturday morning in the apartment, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors, the clatter of pans in the kitchen, and Micah's cartoon voices rising from the living room. It was real, and it was mine. One Sunday in April, I stood in front of a mirror, buttoning the sleeves of a fresh white shirt. Zara came in, barefoot, carrying a navy tie. "Here," she said, her voice light, teasing. "You forgot your armor." I took the tie from her, brushing her fingers. "How do I look?" "Like someone who's finally not haunted." I nodded. "That's how I feel." We were headed to brunch. Not just any brunch, one hosted by the Fletcher Foundation, an organization that supported single fathers navigating custody battles. I'd been asked to speak, to share my story, publicly. At first, I said no. But Zara reminded me, "You're not telling it for you anymore. You're telling it for the ones still in it." So I said yes. And now, here we were. Micah in a blazer, holding Zara's hand. Me in the cleanest outfit I'd owned since the day I walked out of that courtroom for the last time. The brunch hall was in a luxury high-rise off Park Avenue, ceiling-high windows and crisp linens. Families gathered at each table, men with tired eyes, children with guarded smiles, volunteers passing out waffles and fruit. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't read from notes. I didn't need to. "My name is Logan Pierce," I began, gripping the edges of the podium. "A year ago, I was fighting for my son, fighting in court, fighting inside my home, fighting in my own head. I thought I was doing everything wrong. I thought staying quiet made me strong, that sacrifice meant letting go of who I was to hold on to who I thought I had to be. I paused. My son's mother, she didn't see me anymore. She saw routine, she saw boredom, and then she saw someone else. There were nods, some quiet sighs. I stayed too long. Not because I was weak, but because I believed that love could fix anything. That if I was kind enough, patient enough, devoted enough, I could stop someone from walking out. I was wrong. A man in the back wiped his eyes. I left that apartment with nothing but a suitcase and a child who barely understood why one parent suddenly disappeared from his bedtime routine. I looked at Micah in the front row. He smiled. But I found something better than revenge. I found clarity. I found dignity. I found peace. Not by winning in court, but by showing up. Every morning. Every night. Every moment in between. Zara squeezed Micah's shoulder. I was called average. I was called boring. But I learned that consistency is a superpower, that loyalty is not weakness, that being underestimated can be the greatest gift of all, because while they're writing you off, you're writing your legacy. I finished, breath shaking slightly. And now, a year later, I'm standing here, with sole custody, with a son who knows he's loved, with a partner who never needed to fix me to respect me. I am not bitter. I am not broken. I am not behind. I am whole. And you can be too. The room stood. Some clapped. Some just cried. And I knew I had closed the loop. That night, we didn't go out to celebrate. We went home. Micah fell asleep early after a round of laughter and 3 servings of Zara's cinnamon bread. Zara and I sat on the balcony, legs curled under us, wine glasses untouched. You were powerful today, she said. You're the reason I had anything to say. She turned to me. No, you already had the story. I just gave you space to tell it. I looked out at the skyline. The same city that once made me feel invisible now felt welcoming. Not perfect, but familiar. Like a song I finally knew how to sing. I want to marry you, I said suddenly. Zara blinked. What? I don't mean today or tomorrow. I mean someday, when we're ready. I want you in this for the long haul, with me, with Micah. She stared at me for a long moment, then smiled softly. You know, I never believed I was someone anyone stayed for. You were just waiting for someone who understood what staying actually meant. We didn't rush to seal it with a kiss. We just sat there, our hands tangled, letting the silence speak the rest. A month later, Micah started soccer camp. Zara bought him new cleats. I packed his lunchbox every morning with notes written in marker. You've got this, or T-Rexes always win. We walked him to the field together. At the first scrimmage, he ran toward me after his goal, arms outstretched like wings, and I caught him, lifted him high. As his laughter rang in my ears, I thought, this is what it means to win. Not courtroom victories, not gossip columns, not even new love, but this feeling of being known, of being chosen, of being home. Sierra never returned to the city. We heard she'd relocated to the Pacific Northwest, bought a property near a vineyard. Some said she was working on a memoir. Others said she was seeing someone new. I didn't care. She had faded, not with fury, but with finality. That was her ending, and this was mine. On the anniversary of my motel check-in, the day after our divorce, Zara surprised me. She recreated that day, but differently. A reservation at a boutique suite, sleek and quiet. A front desk with a kind receptionist who handed me a keycard and said, "Enjoy your evening, sir." Inside the room, candles, records playing softly, Zara in a midnight blue dress. She poured me a drink. To survival, she said. I raised my glass. To reinvention. In that moment, I wasn't the man who got left. I wasn't the man who lost everything. I wasn't the man with a broken home or a shredded heart or an ex with too much power. I was Logan Pierce. Father. Partner. Victor. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I finally lived right. Some stories don't end with explosions or confessions. Some end with a quiet truth. Not all endings are failures, and not all beginnings come with fanfare. There are moments in life when the pain of letting go feels heavier than the comfort of holding on. But staying in the wrong place for too long teaches you what real freedom feels like when it finally arrives. It's not revenge. It's not pride. It's peace. Sometimes the greatest power lies in choosing not to fight, but to rebuild, to stop chasing the version of yourself someone else refused to see, and start becoming the person you were always meant to be. Love, loyalty, and consistency are never wasted, even if they aren't returned. Because when you show up fully for yourself and those who matter, you win. Quietly, profoundly, and permanently. So, if you're in the middle of your storm right now, hold on. The sun will rise again. And when it does, you'll realize the strongest version of you was born from the quietest kind of survival. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more powerful stories.